If you've got something to say, make sure you unmute yourself, but otherwise, please keep yourself muted. For video today, video, we usually say, oh, keep your video on, but we do have a rather large group today. So if you could, we're going to ask that you do video in two circumstances. The first one being if you are speaking. So if you are speaking, if you're sharing something, then go ahead and turn your camera on. Or if we are part of a conversation. So if we're having a group conversation, whether it be large or small, we also ask that you turn your video on then. Otherwise, if you're just in listening mode, you can keep your video off. Also, please keep in mind this is a recorded session. So just keep in mind that you can go back and look at these in your lead SharePoint site, and you can go back and view these should you need to remember something. And then finally, just to take breaks as needed. We are all grown up. So if you need to take care of something, whether that be yourself or your dog or your child, go ahead and do that. Take that break, step away. You can just drop us a BRB in the chat. We all know what that means. Just let us know when you come back. Also, just a couple of reminders about navigating Teams and the Teams feature. We know that we're not always so used to Teams. And so in the Teams, you're going to see a couple of things. And at the we kind of went over this last week. And let me show you. I'm going to escape my main screen here so I can show you how Teams works. Just want to give you again that quick tutorial. If you want to raise your hand, if you have a question, you want to say something, you can, this little smiley face with his hand up, you can push this raise hand, and that'll let us know that you've got something to say and you want us to address you. There's also these other reactions, so like thumbs up and hearts if you just really like what someone said or you want to applaud what someone said. You can always add those reactions as well. This here that looks like a speech bubble is your chat feature. So if you want to have access to the chat, you want to see the chat as it's going on, just click this feature. If you want to know who's here, you can click these two little like human looking things, and that will tell you who all is in the meeting today. Our other important features are our video. So if you push the one that looks like a camera, that's video on, video off. Your mute looks like the microphone. And then of course, leave. So if you just really just are sick of us and don't want to be here, you can hit the leave button and we can have a conversation about it later. All righty, let me grab my screen back. Okay. There we go. Also, just a reminder for staying connected. There's a couple of ways that we can stay connected with each other in this virtual world, which is somewhat challenging. The first is the Padlet. We'll be adding new questions each week. And so it's just new, light questions, just what's going on in your life and what's your favorite thing about fall, just so we can kind of get to know each other. We may make connections that will extend well beyond this Teams meeting or these Teams activities. So remember to post your name to the comment, because I cannot get that fixed for some reason, probably because I don't do the paid version, and respond to other comments. So if you are reading your team's comments, you're like, oh my gosh, I did that thing too. Leave a comment, or if you have a question, or there's several people in the group who are like, I love to read. So I was like, oh, give me some good book recommendations. Also, we have our Kentucky Lead SharePoint site. And so this is another great way to reach out to your teammates. Becca's going to go into the directory and some information around that later on. But this is going to tell you like, oh my gosh, where was Shannon from? What district was she in? Oh yeah, that's where it was. And so just kind of give you that information, and if you learn that someone on your team is like a behavior specialist, and maybe you're having an issue or a concern, or you just have a question about behavior within your job. So you can reach out to that person and say, hey, I know that you do this. Like what advice would you give? Or do you have any resources to share? And also just a reminder of our norms, just to remember to participate respectfully, be considerate and welcome multiple viewpoints. We all don't think the same, and that's what makes this team so great. Devote your attention to those speaking and sharing. Thing I like to say is be there and be here. If there's somewhere else your attention really needs to be, if you have an emergency going on, this isn't the place. Go take care of yourself and take care of the thing you take care of. But while we're here, be here. So try to avoid distractions of emails and whatever's going on in your phone. We know that's hard, but just make sure that you're devoting your attention to this time together. Also ask questions for clarification. So if someone uses an acronym, as we always do in special education, or someone just, says something you're not really sure what that meant, always ask. And again, you can raise your hand or you can use that chat feature. Be courageous and speak your truth. This is also very important. We all have multiple perspectives, expertise, and experiences. So it's really important that we share those so that we can grow together. Also, own your intentions and your impacts. Keep in mind that what you say, again, whatever the intention is behind it and the impact that it has, be ready to own that. Also, and one of my favorites, just honor our time together. Again, it's that attention thing, but let's just honor our time together. Let's be here, let's be together, and let's make the most of this. Our agenda looks something like this. We have time today from 10 to 12. We're going to do our check-ins, which we're doing right now. We're going to have some words of welcome and some updates. We have a quick survey activity. We have some informational instructional leadership around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're going to have a quick break around 11:25. Then we're going to have some group sharing time, some small group questions and reflections. We're going to have an update on some technology and just some technology information. And then we will have our evaluation and wrap up. And before we move on, do we have any questions from anybody on the team? And I'm going to depend on my teammates here helping us host. Let me know if there are any questions, because when I'm in present mode, I can't see the chat.
Yeah,
Shasta, I have a question or a comment. There is
Mhm.
one participant that is joined from the phone, and I need them to join from a different device rather than calling in so that they're able to participate in breakout room conversations. The majority or a lot of today is going to be through the breakout room sessions. So if you did call in, I need you to, if possible, join from your computer, please. Thank you.
Mhm. Thomas, did you have something?
No, I was going to support you with the questions or any hands, and I don't see any at this time, Shasta.
Okay. I'll go ahead and move us on then. But again, don't hesitate to ask questions if you have them. And so let's jump to words of welcome. We have Dr. Mike Abel with us today. Go ahead, Mike.
Hello, everybody. And thank you, Shasta. As we were saying, congratulations to the new cohort, and I want to welcome the existing cohort and encourage you all as you're moving forward. This is important work. It's exciting work. You all are embarking on I think, an amazing journey and a great one of opportunity to being part of the LEADS project. So I wanted, as I was thinking about the welcome here, I just wanted to try and share a few things that might be helpful to you. Whenever I speak with folks that are going down a road similar to this, the journey can be challenging at times. And I always like talking with people that have gone down the road before me to try and just learn some things. So in this welcome, I just wanted to share, I've kind of got 10 tips of things I didn't expect as a dose. I work at the University of Kentucky's Human Development Institute, but I started out actually as a school psychologist and then was a director of special education for a number of years, ran the preschool program as well. Back in the day, they were combined. And I worked for the most part in school districts that were around 1,000 to around 3,000 kids, probably pretty typical of what you might be facing when you do eventually come out into a position as director of special ed. So I have my top things I didn't expect that I want you all to just think a little bit about and keep it in the back of your mind. My first one was transportation, school transportation. Had no clue about buses and things like that when I took over, and I didn't realize how important they were in the um, special ed program. For example, they might have a school bus director that'll run a school bus, to the bottom of a road, but I have a student that's in a wheelchair, and their parents can't get them down to the bottom of the road, and so that would cause innumerable problems for me. Parents would get upset, etc. And so I would always then talk with the transportation director before school started, see if there were any kind of odd situations they need to be aware of, such as maybe we just need to have a small bus running that route, or just have a van that goes out there and picks up the student because the parents can't get down to the road. Transportation, number one. Number two, accounting principles. I didn't get a degree in accounting. My background is obviously in special ed, but I needed to quickly learn how to run budgets. I became close friends with my finance officer there at the school district, accounting clerk, whatever they want to call them. And I learned how to use a calculator. I learned how to use an Excel spreadsheet. There are a lot of people that'll help you with that, but I definitely didn't expect that because you're going to manage budgets day one. Number three, politics. That's just part of life, and it's going to be part of the job as well. They're people, principals, teachers. Um, they want things, they have agendas, have issues, and you just need to be aware of that. It doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. It's just a part of life, and knowing where people will come from will help you be more successful in that. Number four, hostile parents and teachers. Definitely didn't expect this. When I got into special education, I thought, well, I'm here to help folks. People are going to kind of want to work together, but there are going to be some teachers as well as parents that um, are just angry. And sometimes it really comes from my child has been identified and qualifies for special education, and I never really thought they had issues or challenges. I thought things were going to be perfect. And so they had to take that out. And sometimes that came out with anger or frustration, or they don't, receive the services they think they're entitled to, and you have to, deal with that through the ARC process, things like that. Same thing with teachers. There's some teachers that just have, challenges working with some of our students, don't want to work with some of our students. That's rare, but there is a small population that sometimes parents and teachers are just going to be upset, and you need to learn how to deal with that and manage that, and especially not take it personally. It's just, part of life. It's just part of the working world that we're in. And I think being aware of that, especially when you might go into a meeting that there's tensions are going to be pretty high, it helps you be prepared so you can be more successful. Number five, I titled A New Career Road. I wouldn't be where I'm at right now if I hadn't been a director of special education. It was a very rewarding career. I learned an immeasurable amount of information, and it allowed me to continue to grow. And so if you spend, 20, 30 years as a director of special education, great. But also realize that you don't have to necessarily be in that position forever. You're going to have other opportunities if you want to pursue those. Number six, police, working with the law enforcement agencies. Never expected that. Police will show up typically at my high schools when crimes were committed by some of my students. They would come and want to speak with them. Unfortunately, those things happen. There's not much you can do about it. I did have some students who were arrested at school, and I hated that. But you have no control over that. That's a law enforcement issue, and you just have to be aware of that. Number seven, high school student schedules. I never realized how important, especially with my high school kiddos, setting their schedules were. And at the beginning of the school year, all schedules are set, and it's tough to change schedules because kids need certain credits to graduate. There's only a certain number of kids that can be in a certain teacher's classroom, etc. And my students, my special ed kids, they don't work well with certain teachers. And so if they get kicked out of a class and they need that credit, well, they're not gonna, that teacher's gonna fight to keep them out of there. And thus I may have a student that's not going to graduate at the end of the year. So I began working with my counselors at the high school at the beginning of the year before school ever started. And we put out a whiteboard, and it was probably around 15 to maybe 25 kids max. And we worked on their schedule, every class, every period throughout the whole year to make sure we set them up for success as much as possible with the right teachers, with the right subject matter, because it's not just teachers. There are going to be certain classes, they're not going to have success in. And so we tried to plug them into those classes they would, because those classes fill up quickly. I mean, you've got a high school, man. I had kids, I think my high school had 800-900 kids in it. And so it's easy for our special ed kids to be lost, but not if you're paying attention and working with the guidance counselors. So number seven is high school student schedule, working with the schedulers. Number nine, alternative schools. And the districts I worked in, they did not have they did not have their own alternative schools. One of them I worked really hard to get it started. You're going to have some kids that just are not going to be as successful in a traditional school, and they just need an alternative school. I don't deny that, and I think it's important to understand that's part of the continuum of special education services. And so work closely with your alternative school director. If you don't have one in the smaller districts, we had contracts with local or ones that were nearby in neighboring districts. And so that did entail more scheduling challenges, and you had to run an extra bus going out of district, et cetera. But working with your alternative school directors is critical for success. And I just never thought about that. Number 9, administrative or administrator infighting. Part of life, unfortunately, people don't get along, students don't get along, and sometimes it's the same way with administrators. And you always want to keep it professional. If you get drawn into it, always want to stay kind of a neutral party. Even you're going to have some that are going to be your friends. And it's very, very important to stay neutral in it. It's not saying not be a friend or be supportive, but things can get sideways really fast. And you need to be aware of that. And by keeping it, again, professional and being a neutral third party, you're going to serve your students the best. And always stay focused on the kids, always keep a professional attitude, and it'll serve you well. And then number 10 are lawyers. Never thought about working closely with lawyers. You will. And it's important to understand that. And you're going to have a couple kind of lawyers. Every district is going to have an attorney, their board attorney, and they typically work with other matters that the district has to deal with. They may or may not be knowledgeable about special ed law. And if they're not, I had one that was not, and I really had to educate them on special education law. And that's really not a good thing to have to do because you're going to be busy as it is. You want to have an attorney that you can call in who understands special ed law. And so one thing you can do is have a second attorney on retainer who is a specialist in special ed law. And they're not going to be in your district. They might be on the other side of the state, but they know special ed law and can work with you if your district is being pulled in the due process or being sued for some type of matter. You want to be prepared. You want to have experts on your side. You're not going to be a legal expert. You're not going to be an attorney. You are going to understand law. There's a special ed law class you'll typically go through in your program here. But you want to have attorneys you can talk with, bounce ideas around, especially if you're going to go into a due process hearing or have to face someone in court. So it's a lot. Those top 10 matters, I'm posting them in the chat room. This is being recorded, so you can go back and take a look at those. But those are things that I really spent a lot of time with in my career that I didn't think a lot about when I was getting into it. And so I'd encourage you all to link up with other directors in the surrounding counties and in your special ed co-op. They typically have a special ed director support group, meets monthly. And you'll find those experienced ones that'll be able to help you with these matters and get you up to speed rather quickly. But as always, I wish you well. I encourage you to stay the course. It's a very important role that you're preparing for. You're going to have an opportunity to impact many, many lives. So keep up the good work and have a great day.
Thank you, Mike. That is great. Thank you so much for posting that in chat, and then again, just sharing that your experience. I mean, I'm looking at this list, and you're right. I can't imagine that we would have all thought about all of these things, but this is very helpful. And Mike, I'm sure that if people had questions or wanted to reach out to you, would you be okay with that as well?
Always happy to. Like I said, I want you all to be successful. And Thomas and Pete both have my contact information. So, and I'm sure I'll be talking with you more too as the cohorts are going through. So, yeah, more than happy to, Shasta.
Great. Thank you. There. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to do is to kind of like get our brains ready for our next awesome presenter. And so we are going to have you take this quick survey. And again, I'm going to exit my screen here so that I can share this information with you. There is 2 ways to get to the survey. It's a Teams Forms survey. And you can use this QR code and just do it from your phone. It's pretty easy to use from your phone, or you can use the link in the survey, and I'm going to drop that in our chat. It's kind of long and weird, and I apologize. But there it is. Just 3 questions, so it won't take us too long. So go ahead and hop into that survey. Let me know if you have any issues. Actually, let Becca know because I can't solve them. Maybe Becca can. And I'm going to switch to our results. Your survey should look something like this. Are you familiar with? What are the 3 primary? And you choose 3. And then a question about OCR. So it's going to look like that. I'll give you a few minutes. Already seeing several responses in. And there's no grade here, so don't worry. We're not going to be able to like look up and if you got it right or wrong and then like scold you later. There's no red ink. It's completely anonymous, so no worries there. Becca or Thomas, how many participants do we have today that I should be expecting responses from?
You should have around 30.
Okay, I'll keep watching this number then till we get to about that 30 mark.
Someone asked if you would please share the QR code again.
Absolutely.
I think some people are having trouble accessing that link. If they do have trouble accessing that link, can they put their response in the chat? Would that be appropriate as well?
Yeah, I'm sure that's fine. We're going to know who said it, but that's fine.
Anonymity is gone.
And it is. There's that QR again. I'll leave that up for just a few more seconds here because I know sometimes that is just easier. Okay, looks like we're at about 24 and we kind of looks like we're in a pause. So I'll go ahead and share these. Are you familiar with national preschool expulsion and suspension rates? So it looks like we're kind of split there between the middle where some of us said, about half of us said somewhat familiar and half of us said unfamiliar. It's like a good 50-50 split right there. What are the 3 primary risk factors for preschool expulsion and suspension? And you can see what we chose, where it looks like most of us felt that the inconsistent school attendance was the primary risk factor. Another high risk factor, according to this team, they think is housing and or food insecure, as well as lack of family engagement. Identify as a boy had 9 responses, or 9 people chose that. An IEP or IFSP in progress. Our last question, the Office of Civil Rights, or OCR, provides preschool expulsion and suspension data or rates and recommended policies and practices. Yes, no, or in progress. And it looks like most of us said yes. 18% said yes, they do provide that. A couple of us said no, they don't. And some of us said that it's in progress. It's a work in progress. Okay. Anybody have anything they want to just add or point out about these questions or just share about these responses? Dr. Wesley, is there anything you wanted to add or share?
Yeah, I just think I put these questions together because I was interested to know where we are in our understanding of preschool expulsion and suspension. And I think we're going to learn a lot today. Some of the responses are somewhat on par, but we're going to take a journey today to really unpack all 3 of those areas relate to all 3 of the questions. And so we will walk away together learning a little bit more than we may have known before. So I'm excited to take this journey with you in the next hour.
Great. Thank you everyone for responding and fighting with teams over that. Thank you for sharing that information. And now we have, um, we're to Dr. Wesley, and so she's
That's,
going to talk to us
excuse me,
through some
Shasta,
instruction.
before,
Yes, go
if you
ahead.
don't mind, before we move into Dr. Wesley's presentation, um, can um, can we move to the Kentucky Leads updates with Pete and myself, and then we can go into the presentation if that's okay with
You're
you.
right. I skipped that, didn't I? Look, it just went away. I'm going to blame it on the universe. I'm so sorry. Yes, go ahead, Kentucky Leads updates. I apologize.
No problem. Thank you, Shasta, and I'll turn it over to Pete for the updates.
Hello, yes. Pete Heckner, and I am the project coordinator. Also, I represent Human Development Institute at the University of Kentucky. So, yeah, uh, first off, welcome to everyone. And I wanted to congratulate Cohort 2 for being selected. And it is a competitive application. So congratulations to you. I also wanted to restate the importance of attendance, and the expectation is that you will attend. And as Ms. Atkins has brought to the brought out already this morning, we do ask that you connect on a device such as a laptop, and not to go with the telephone, because some of the activities that we're going to engage in are extremely difficult to make happen. And also, I wanted to reinforce that if you have questions, if you have concerns about attendance or family conflicts, we certainly understand things happen. Life is messy. And if you will, please contact me. I will put my email in the chat. And I would ask that you look at me as a first point of contact. I will reach out to the appropriate folks and work through if that's necessary. And Thomas, if you like, please, I'll pass it on to you, Dr. Williams.
Yeah, so thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Pete. And I don't really have anything to add. I just kind of want to echo a few things that you said. So yes, so we do strongly encourage that you all, have a laptop or computer so you can fully engage throughout the seminar. And also, it is expected, as Pete just mentioned, that you attend the Saturday sessions. If you are not able to attend, please reach out to our project coordinator, Pete, and he will speak with you individually around next steps or how you can make up the Saturday seminar. So again, Cohort 2, welcome. We're so happy that you're here and that you're joining us with this journey, and we look forward to a very engaging presentation from Dr. Wesley today. So I will turn it over to, I guess, Dr. Wesley, so she can go ahead and begin her presentation. Thank you, Dr. Wesley.
All right. And did we want to do any introductions, or I can just go for it?
We can just go for it.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. I am new to Teams, so hopefully all will go well. Actually, let me do escape. I am just excited to be with you. I forgot a step. I'm excited to be with you today. I come to you as I get my tech ready. Hopefully it all works. As first of all, an early educator who was a preschool teacher. I was a director. I have been head teacher. I have been a janitor. I have been a psychologist. I've been everything. I'm also a mom of 5 adult children, of which 3 are boys, 2 are girls. And I'm a grandma, a grandmother of 4 beautiful children. They're my children. And they're 2 girls and 2 boys. So that just positions me in the work. And I'm all things early education. I'm just excited to spend this next hour with you. I'm very much a conversational person. So you can tell me all your stories, all your secrets, or none of them. I'm very transparent. At the end of the session, you'll get my contact information. So feel free to reach out to me if you have other questions. Sometimes an hour is not enough to take a deep dive, and you just need someone to reflect with. And I don't know if I always have the answers, but I always can help you find them. So I'm excited to be with you. I am also the Director of Quality Enhancement and Professional Development for Oakland Unified School District, Early Education Department in Oakland, California. And I love exactly what I do. I work with 200 amazing early educators, and I also work closely with our special education department, early ed, and we just was awarded a $2.4 million grant last year that I wrote on inclusion and early education. So I'm really excited about that work, and maybe that'll weave into some of the pieces I share with you today. So feel free. I know there's folks who are going to monitor the chat. That's going to be really important. If you see something in the chat, some of my colleagues out there, please raise it because I cannot see anything. This is so new to me. So, okay, so we're going to do a little bit of a reintroduction. I know that you amazing scholars got to learn each other a little bit last week or get a sense of what the program is all about, but we're going to get to know each other even just a little bit more. So we'll have some small group conversation, and we'll do introductions that way. And then I'll start diving into the content, talking about what silent expulsion suspension looks like in the early years. We'll learn about the 3 bills, the 3 Bs from my colleague, Dr. Walter Gilliam. The 3 Bs, which was part of your poll today. So we're going to learn about what are the 3 Bs and what does it look like. And then just look at a little bit of research about what we can do to move research into practice. So a lot of times we stay in the theoretical framework, but we don't move research into practice. And so I am providing you some tools and resources to help you with that. I do believe someone may have already or will drop in the chat a Padlet that is full of resources and links that I'm going to cover today that you may want to go back and revisit. So is that true?
Yes, Dr. Wesley, we'll drop. We dropped it in at the beginning, and we'll put it back in the chat.
Okay, you guys are fantastic. If you guys are like me, sometimes I need things 2 or 3 times. So, all right. So before we dive in, I think the leaders of this program did a really good job of trying to create safety and create a brave space. And I just want to reiterate what that might look like. So for us today, we're diving into a topic that can be very sensitive. It may have impacted your own personal life. You may have been on the other end where you've engaged in a practice where some children have been expelled or suspended at the preschool age. And so I just want to make sure that we create a safe space. And I don't know if anyone's able to unmute themselves, but if you can, I would love for someone just to read out what we mean by safety today. And feel free just to volunteer to read just what safety means.
I'll go for it. I don't mind to.
Oh, okay.
All right, I'll go ahead. A comfortable place to start conversations related to diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, centers all voices in their entry point and positionality in the work.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for reading that. Exactly. So all of us are in different places when we start talking about DEI work and talking about justice. Some of us have been in it for a long time. Some of us have been thinking about it. Some of us have been introduced to it. Some of us want nothing to do with it. We are all over the place, right? Like, what does this mean in respect to early education, especially related to preschool expulsion suspension? So what I want us to do is just honor that all of us are in different starting places and that this is lifelong work. Even if you call yourself a so-called expert, it is never ending. We're always learning new thoughts and concepts around what it means to make sure that all children have access to high quality education. And in this case, access to high quality early education, including our children who have special needs. So, and if I can get another volunteer to read what it means to have a brave and courageous space.
Brave and courageous space. We will work to keep the space safe and share and grow. We will work to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. We will accept non-closure.
Yes, and just another way to reiterate that, again, we're growing. Some things that come up, even when I do this, I've done this for many national presentations, statewide presentations. I've done it locally, and it still hits me right here because I was directly impacted by preschool expulsion and suspension. And I've also been on the end where I've had to send children home. And so I've been in the position of administrator doing it, and I've also been a parent who received it. And so it still hits me. And we also know sometimes when we're faced with a topic that's difficult, we may not have the answers and solutions right away. It may take some time. So just ponder on, we want to have a safe space, but we also want you to lean in with your courageous voice and share, be vulnerable and say, my goodness, maybe I've done this before, or I received this before, or have a friend or a family member who's been on the receiving end, and we do want to disrupt the practice. So just hold that for yourself today. So as we begin, just before we get ready to go into breakout rooms in the next 3 to 5 minutes, there is a concept I want to introduce, or for some reintroduce to you. It is this notion and concept around intersectionality. Intersectionality is just a big fancy word that was developed. Actually, it comes out of work of Derek Bell, but Kimberly Crenshaw from UCLA really put it on the map in the 90s, that talks about how many of us look and experience the world based on the many different identities that we have, the many different lenses that we come through. And for some of us, it's ever evolving identities. That it's not just fixed. Some of our identities are fixed, some of it's not, some of it's changing and evolving. And so what we're going to do today in small groups is try on sharing some of our identities and what that looks like, whether it's your age, and I'll share that later on the next slide, or maybe it's where you live, where you're born, your family. What, are you number 1 in the birth order, or like myself, number 2, or had children who are 5 of them, and then you think about their child number 5 in the birth order. So you just your marital status, like all of these things come into play, right? Single, married, divorced. You get to share what it is that you feel comfortable with, and I'm going to model that for you. But she does invite us to say that before you can think about doing race equity work, we have to know where some of us are positioned in the work. Where are we coming from? What is our lens? What's influencing the way that we think and the way we see the world? And so I am going to model that actually for you because you're going to do it in your small groups, and it's going to be 3 to 4 of you. Just got to go back. There it is. All right. And so what we're going to do is think about the intersections of our identity. We're going to also introduce ourselves. So we'll get in groups of 3 to 4. And so I'm going to model what that is. So for example, my identity, I do identify as someone who grew up in the foster care system. I spent several years in and out of foster care. Geographic location, I grew up in Oakland, California in the 70s. So now I'm naming my age. I'm half a century old. I do consider myself, in terms of education, to have an advanced degree, 2 advanced degrees. So that gives you a sense of like what influenced the way I think. I'm sharing more than 2 or 3 of my identities, but I also happen to be a woman who identifies as being African American. So what you're going to do when you get into your breakout room is just share a piece of yourself. Just take 1 or 2 minutes to share who you are, pieces of your identity that you want to share. It can include your language background. It could include your history, your heritage, where you come from, where your ancestors come from. We all have ancestors that has come from somewhere, whether it's Europe or Asia or Africa. Where is your heritage, and why does it have such deep meaning for you? So that is an invitation to do this work. And I skipped a slide, so I'm going to go back just a bit. When you get in your breakout rooms with your colleagues and your peers, introduce yourself, say your name, what cohort you're from, and then share 1 or 2 intersections of your identity, similar to what I did, but I overshared. And then also, why is educational equity important? Like, what's the big deal? Isn't it all the same for everybody? You just show up and we just provide services? Or is there something that should influence how we think about equity in education, and even thinking about early education if you're able to try that on? So what we're going to do is now, with the support of the amazing Kentucky Lead staff, we're going to place you in breakout rooms. You're going to be there for 10 minutes each. And I invite you to answer these prompts in 2 minutes or less, which is like a speed dating kind of thing. And then just engage in a conversation after all questions have been answered and everyone has had a turn. So are we ready, Rebecca?
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to open the rooms now. There are 3 to 4 participants in each room, and it does take just a little bit to move into and out of rooms. And so I'll do that now.
Perfect.
Yay, it's working.
Yay, we did it. See, our practice makes perfect sometimes.
So, Dr. Wesley, we do have one participant who is joining us by phone, which makes it it's unable to move him or her into a breakout room. So I will just invite this participant to open their mic, and we'll just make this a small breakout room. So it looks like Shannon. Good morning, Shannon.
Good morning, Shannon.
Hello.
Hey. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I can't. I'm on my phone, so I don't know if Shannon is also on a phone.
I'm on a computer.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, cool. Sorry, I can't see, so it's difficult for me. But this is Allison Nelson, and I'm the one who's calling in by phone. So whenever you're ready for me to speak, just alert me verbally.
Okay, well, let's be a small group together, which is perfect. So the first question is just introduce yourself, what cohort you're with, and then what brought you into this learning space.
All right. If
Okay.
you want, I can go for. Oh, go ahead.
Yes, Shannon, go ahead.
Okay. So I'm Shannon Deep, and I'm from Fayette County Public Schools, and I'm part of Cohort 2. And I came to this workspace just looking to grow my skills as a special education leader and be a part of that as a group with others.
All right. Thank you, Shannon. And then who else do we have?
We have Allison.
Allison.
Hey, this is Allison. I am a school psychologist with Clark County Public Schools. I'm part of Kentucky Leads Cohort 1. And I came to this learning space similar to Shannon as an opportunity to just learn, grow, evolve, and become better suited to serve all individuals.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Allison. And then who else do we have?
It's just the 4 of us, but I'm going to take this opportunity. I have worked with Allison this past year through Cohort 1, but I'm going to take this opportunity to introduce myself to you, Shannon. It's so nice to meet you. My name is Becca Atkins, and I am part of the Kentucky Leads leadership team. And if there's ever anything that you need, I'm here to help make this a worthwhile time for you and to assist you in engaging in this space and in this work. And I'm so excited that you're able to join us. And Allison, I appreciate you calling in and joining today, trying to balance those needs, family, work. I understand that struggle. So thank you. And Dr. Wesley, will you?
Yep, we'll go with the next prompt. So our next prompt is share 1 or 2 intersections of your identity. And it could be your gender, it could be where you grew up, it could be if you're part of a military family, your ethnicity, your race, your heritage, any and all of it's all welcome. So who would, between Shannon or Allison, do either one of you want to share first?
I can go ahead and go Allison, and then, all right. So for my identity, I am married, and I've been married for 20 years and have 2 kids. And in terms of like education level and where I grew up too, I grew up in a house where no one had gone to college, and my dad had about an eighth grade education. So education was something that I kind of explored. I felt like I explored independently, and I think it made me value it much more.
Yeah. 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 And that's why you're here, right? You're just, and especially if you're going into working with children who have inclusion needs or special needs, it's even more so because those are the kids we already know are being pushed out of the system, even if they're participating in it. Doesn't mean they're getting a quality experience. Yeah, thank you for your work and thank you for your service. And thank you for sharing a part of who you are. And then Allison.
Yes. So I'm a female married woman who comes from Appalachia. So me and my husband are both from that area of the state. So definitely identify there. I come from a family of educators. So both my mom and my dad were teachers in the public school system. So I think that gave me a really strong sense of the importance of education. So I think that has definitely directed my path to lead me here. And yeah, that's all I can think of right now.
Well, Allison, thank you for your legacy, because your legacy, right? Like carrying that traditional. I can't
Yeah.
convince my kids to go into education. They went in, two of my girls are engineers. I'm like, who's going to give back to the kids?
Yeah,
So
it's
they're still
funny
trying to.
because my mom, she would always say, like, she would be like, she was trying to encourage me to go into a different direction. She's like, oh, you should go to pharmacy school, or you should do this, or you should do that. And then here I am, 3 college degrees later, working as a school psychologist, working on my birth certificate. So
That's amazing. Exactly. And when I was encouraging them, I was like, but figure out, because you're not going to get rich in this field. This is not about wealth. Your wealth and your richness comes in other ways, but not necessarily monetarily, right? So I am just so glad that you guys shared all the pieces and backgrounds, because it does influence how you think about education and the position that you're taking in education, the role that you're playing. The last question for all of us is to just think about, why is educational equity so important? Like, what's the big deal? And then again, invite anyone who would like to go first to share. Oh, did I skip anyone on the intersections, Becca? Did I skip you?
Uh, yes, you did, but that's that's okay. um, I have actually thought a lot about that question since we had the rehearsal, and the two things I wanted to share. So thanks for coming back to me, because you made me think the other day, like, how would I define myself? I think the first way that I would define myself is as an adoptive mother. That is the most important thing to me. I have a daughter whose birth mother is from El Salvador. She was born in Guatemala City, and she came to Kentucky in 2006. So yeah, I'm an adoptive mother. And then my family I have a lot of strong matriarch women in my family, all educators, the majority of educators as well. And so those were the two things that bubbled up for me when I thought of how I wanted to identify myself, both as an adoptive mother and then just a female in my family that's full of strong females. So thank you.
And doing courageous work in education, right? Because this is not all of us, Shannon, Allison, myself, you, Becca. This is not easy work. It's not for the mild or the meek. And every day is a new day. No day is ever the same. So, give ourselves a little pat on the back for just doing, sometimes I say God's work. So it's not easy, but here we are, dedicated to it. So our last question as we wrap up, I'm looking for time, just 20 seconds or less. Why is educational equity important to you? And I'll just go first. I think it's important because I don't want to see any child who doesn't feel they don't have the right to thrive because they didn't get something from our educational system. Not one child, no matter how they identify. So that's my why. Who'd like to go next?
All right. So for strong, healthy communities that are safe, we need everyone to feel empowered and that is so important. And so for us to foster that through our education system, I think is important for the communities.
I'm bringing the people back now. I had to push the close button at 10:50,
great.
so I do apologize, but we're going to have others begin to filter in.
All right. All right. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. And Allison, maybe you could put your Y in the chat if you feel comfortable.
Away.
Yeah, I apologize for the.
That's
It
okay.
went away.
Well,
Did we get a
come back.
warning
So
this
as you come
time?
back, just
No, we did not.
Shasta, I did not give you a warning. I'm so sorry. I got to participate in a small group myself this time, so I lost my
that's okay. That's
agenda
okay,
of what I
Ava.
do, but I did enjoy participating in small group this time, so thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. So grace to everyone. So welcome back, everyone. We're a large group, and we're just going to take a few share outs about what you learned about your colleagues, about yourself, what brought you to this work, intersections of your identity. Anybody can share what that small group experience was like for them or what you learned, and just unmute yourself. It's an invitation to share.
It's Amanda Noak's birthday today.
Happy birthday!
Thanks, Pete.
You're a year younger.
Yes, I am.
That's right. All right, who would like to share?
You know, I'll share out something that was interesting that we all brought up was actually one of the little points was religion. So we all connect with a different denomination, but how that had played such a role in our lives. So that was neat to have that conversation.
Yeah, either whether it's Christianity or Buddhism or whatever that is, but it influences you how you think about it, influences how you walk in the world, but it also how you treat human beings, other folks, right? Yeah, thank you for sharing. All right, who else?
I'll just share that one thing I realize is that we don't do this very often as people. We don't share who we are and like all those. It felt a little odd to hear people kind of divulging their secrets on who they are, right? And or even sharing myself. This is everything I am, or who makes who I am. And so I don't know. We just don't do that very much.
No, and we sort of just walk into the spaces in school sites or school systems, and we just get to the work, right? We're like, it's all about the work, what policies, practices, we just get into it, and we don't even know how we're positioned in the work to understand how when was it Mike, Dr. Abel, when he was talking, I was just like, oh gosh, he's sharing a piece of himself in his 10, wisdom, right? And so that gave us a little bit more of him. But what if we could just create a pause like this? It doesn't take very long, but just create a pause just to say, well, how are we showing up in the work? Who are we besides our name? This is our position, this is our role in the work, but who really are when we peel back the layers? So thank you for bringing that up, because it helps you to think about the colleagues you're going to be working with, or a practice you could do as a leader for your team when you start off with them. So let's take another one.
See, Stacey has her hand up.
Okay.
I didn't want to, I wasn't going to share about our group because Krista already did that, but I just wanted to comment on what you had said, like how, we just get right to the work. We don't really do this intersection part, but my feeling is that we actually kind of do in a way, but it takes a longer process. I'm not going to go up and say, hey, I'm Stacy and I am, I'm a person with a disability, I mean, it will take, I feel like I got to get to know someone, and that is a process in itself. So, this was more like you have 10 minutes, go, so, and we don't normally do that unless you're doing speed dating. So that was my comment.
Yeah. And I don't know if you remember, Stacey, I said, I think I said speed dating. We're going to get to know each other really quickly, really fast. And typically you can build this in. This is something you can build into over time. And you can just say, sometimes we say, what's a fun fact about you? But there's different ways to get intersections of people's identity. Okay, let's take one more and then we'll move to the next slide. Anyone else would like to share? Okay.
Jen, you're unmuted. Are you going to share?
I was just getting ready to mute myself and take myself.
No, Jen, share.
Thank you. I think my two new friends, we were pretty like-minded in what we want to get out of the cohort, and we're all just kind of spoke a little bit how we were kind of scared that maybe we would not be prepared to make some of the hard decisions that Mike spoke about. So we're excited to have some support in that on how to be an effective dose and kind of be able to back ourselves up whenever we have to say yes and no, and just kind of have another leg to stand on.
Yeah, yeah, and having wisdom of those who've gone before us makes such a difference. So I don't know how reachable Mike is, but hopefully you could call him, email him, and just pick on his brain a little bit. All right. So we are going to move forward. We've already done that piece, and that's just me. So what I wanted to say here, just in summary of that experience, all of us are different. We're not a monolith. We do carry some similarities, but just like a fingerprint or thumbprint, we all have our own unique profile to who we are and how we show up to the work, and we also have commonality to what we do. So just keep thinking about that with your colleagues from cohort 1 and cohort 2, how you're intermixing and how you are thinking about it in your respective cohorts in terms of looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I always like to add the J, which is the justice, which is activating, doing something that's actionable. So what I wanted to share here was that we know that the history of education, I'm not going to take you down a big rabbit hole, but we know that when education was first introduced in the 1600s, it was primarily just for males and mostly for ministry and for government. Pretty much that was it. That's the only reason why you go to school, for those two purposes. We also know that those folks of color were not permitted to necessarily participate initially in the education system until fully participate in a way that was desegregated until the mid 1950s with the Brown versus Board of Education. And even after 1954, it took a couple years to desegregate our schools. And during that time and even before, there was a lot of standardized testing. We still have it with us today, but standardized testing was birthed out of this kind of sorting: who's most capable, who's most intellectual, who has the capabilities, the competencies, the mastery to attend an educational institution and have the withal to get something out of it. And then we also had another big movement, which you all are probably very much aware of, is students with special needs was just recently granted in recent times, like in the 1970s. I was 3 years old when this happened. And so that's a new concept. When you think about the history of education from the 1600s now, with civil rights and activism around making sure that all folks with, even those with special needs, could participate in special ed. So that's going to come into handy in just a little bit, because we're going to be thinking about this whole idea around preschool expulsion suspension. And I just wanted to let you know, how the heck did I fall into this? I was getting really curious about why so many children were being excused from preschool. I did not understand why kids literally were being expelled. We didn't call it expulsion. We didn't call it suspension. We just said, this isn't a good fit for you, or the behavior is so much so that we're not really sure how we can create an environment that we can fully support your child, right? So I was with, here in California, we have 58 counties in California, and in Alameda County, which is right there in the heart of the Bay Area, I was seeing it. And so I decided to go and present to our California legislation and really raise up the issue when I started doing my own research around what was happening. So I did this in 2017. And so I only had 10 minutes to testify before all of these, before legislators who were also the counsel to the governor. At that time, it was Governor Jerry Brown. And I had to contextualize what the problem was. And so I just want to invite someone, just if they will, unmute themselves to read how I contextualize the problem defined by 0 to 3. So if anybody could do that for me, that would be great.
Yep.
What is
Young children are being expelled from preschool and child care programs at an astonishing rate, often because of challenging behaviors such as aggression, tantrums, and noncompliance.
Yes, and so this is what there's many complex definitions of expulsion and suspension rates, but this was the most succinct one that I found. And again, this is lifted out from 0 to 3. 0 to 3 is an organization that really focuses on children from birth to 3 and really looking at what their needs are and making sure that there's an early start to their the educational journey, starting at birth. And so this is their definition. As you look at this definition, if you could put in the chat, feel free. What's coming up for you? What are you seeing in this definition that's making you like scratch your head or have a wondering about or curiosity? And again, feel free to put it in your chat, just any reactions or thoughts, or you can unmute yourself and share. And if there's if there are responses in the chat, if my colleagues could just read them out for me.
I just think whenever I read that, I think, well, how do we expect children to become better or to learn the skills they need to not have challenging behaviors or be aggressive or tantrum or be, non-compliance if we don't allow them to come and be taught?
That's exactly it. We teach social emotional skills, we teach math, we teach language and literacy, but we don't always teach how it is that children can have self-regulation skills, like really in a very explicit way, right? To get them positioned to thrive in kindergarten through 12th grade till they enter college or enter the workforce, right? Or both. So yeah, great response. Anyone else?
So Dr. Wesley, we have a few comments in the chat and they're going pretty fast. So I'm going to kind of speed through them.
Okay.
First one I see is that I noticed that these are behaviors I see from many toddlers and preschool age kids. So it's sad to think they lose access to their education because of those. Isn't that why we send our kids to pre-K programs to help with these issues? I thought one of the points of preschool was to help children overcome these behaviors before they reach school age. It seems as though children were being expelled for behavior that is very developmentally typically for that age.
There's so much, I could just leave. You guys don't need me here. There's so much wisdom in the space. That is exactly it. The purpose of preschool is to get them prime. Think about it. Whatever age you are, I already told you I'm a half century old. I'm 51. So we've been on this earth, some of us 30, 40, 50 years. Some of you are younger. I'm jealous. But these beautiful souls have been here 24 months, 36 months, 48 months. And this is a skill that they have to learn, but from the adult perspective, it's considered problematic, and therefore we end up saying this is not a good setting for you. We push them out. Then that family, the ecosystem of the school system, have now impacted that child and that family where they feel like they don't belong, and that sort of colors their lens for the rest of the educational career, their child's school career. So you're very much on par, and this is what I presented to the legislator. This very notion, and folks were like, we didn't even know. Oops, there we go. We didn't even know that preschoolers were being expelled. So I just wanted to contextualize the problem. I also had to show them, well, why the heck does it matter? So I just wanted to invite someone to read the first 2 bullets and then another person to read the last 3 bullets. And you can unmute yourself. Feel free.
High quality preschool lays the foundation for a child's educational career. Preschool is where children are learning how to self-regulate, make friends, communicate, and express their wants and needs while preparing for their educational career within the K-12 system.
Thank you. Someone else.
If children do not have the behavioral and social emotional skills needed to effectively participate in preschool programs, they are missing critical opportunities to grow and learn. Teachers and parents are often the first responders to address challenging behaviors and need knowledge, resources, and supports to nurture positive social emotional development as a foundation of learning.
And actually, this has come from the Center for Enhancing Early Learning Outcomes. So if you want to look at this policy report, so I like to marry practice with policy and keep showing how they inform and impact each other. So this is a policy stance that I can't say that I came up with all of it, but I tried to create a succinct way of presenting it to the legislators when I did. And so this was my way of saying that. And again, if you have reactions, put it in the chat. I'll have to go on to the next part of the presentation, but this is why it matters. If we don't, you guys already said, if we don't stop and create a pause and know that this is the foundation and the entry point to the rest of the kids' school careers, then we're missing it. Why does it matter for special education? Is because when the kids don't get what they need and they persist in the education system, going through the grade levels, these are the kids who didn't get this strong foundation because we pushed them out or silently pushed them out. They end up in being over-identified in special education. And when they didn't really need those services, because all of that could have been mitigated at the earliest age and at the earliest grade level, starting with preschool and even in infant toddler care, but in terms of the formal education system, starting in preschool. So what I'm going to do is just a bit is share a video with you. This whole notion began to make headline news. Seattle Times published it. This is one statistical fact, is that our preschool children are expelled 3 times that of K through 12 students. I was like, wait, what? And when the Office of Civil Rights started collecting that data, in some states, they were astonished that kids are from an early start are being disrupted in their positive connection to school systems. And that carried with them for the rest of their school career. So this is why we want to disrupt this systemic issue around this. So I provided you the Padlet. You have this access to this article. So when you have time, feel free to look at it. But there are many more headline articles like this. This is just one of them that we want to just lift up. So what I'm going to do is get ready to share a video, and I think I'm going to have to reshare because I'm going to stop presenting, and we're going to just take a look at a video that really frames this notion around preschool expulsion very well, much better than what I can do in the small amount of time that we have. And before I do that, this comes from an organization called Prevent Expulsion, Prevent Expulsion. And you can see what expulsion looks like. Sometimes it's called exclusionary discipline practice. Sometimes it's called silent expulsion. Sometimes it's called push out. But you'll see here in school suspension, the child is being sent out of the classroom, such as going you have to go sit with the principal or you have to sit with the director. So that's an in-school suspension that happens, but it doesn't get counted. And someone said earlier in the chat, wait, I think we might be missing this and they're undercounted. You're absolutely right, because in-school suspension in preschool doesn't get counted. And then there's the one that's really easy to count, which is out of school suspension. And that's asking a child to be picked up by grandma, by tia, by auntie, because they had some type of challenging behavior. And then there's straight up expulsion, like don't even come back, forget suspension, like we're just done, it's not a good fit, we need you to think about an alternative, this is the language, an alternative setting. This is what we use as educators. And even I have been guilty of doing it. I have said, I don't think this is a good fit, because in early education, that's what they taught me in my programming. So I had to deprogram myself to say, no, we need to figure out how we can make our program fit you, fit your child's need, and fit you as a family. And then there's the soft or silent expulsion. And this is the one that's really nice in early education. This is asking the family to repeatedly pick up their child because of behavior issues, requiring them to leave or miss work or whatever activity they're engaged in where they're trying to sort of get their lives together. The soft expulsion is what will make a family leave almost indefinitely. They will leave. They will just say, I can't do this. I need a program where I'm not disrupted in my workday, or if they're participating in schooling, where I'm having to stop and pick them up. I might lose wages. Like, you can imagine the whole thing. So these are the different variation of expulsion suspension, and they even get broken down even further. We won't go into that today for sake of time. So we're going to actually watch a video. After we watch this video, we'll probably not take a 7-minute small break. We'll just make it 5-minute, Becca. But we'll watch this 4-minute video. We'll go into a small group again. It'll be this last small group of our for today's session. And then I'm going to share some resources with you. But here is, and let me know if you can't hear the video. But this is a video that talks about what it looks like and why we think it is such an issue with our educators. So here, let me know if you can't hear it, and I'm hoping you can. So here we go.
Did you know that infants, toddlers, and young children are being suspended and expelled from childcare and preschool programs at rates even higher than K through 12? Young children under 5 years old are expelled from state-funded preschools at 3 times the rate of K through 12. Private and community childcare programs expel children at more than 13 times the rate of K through 12 students. Exclusionary discipline practices, such as suspensions and expulsions, deprive children of valuable early learning experiences and teach them to believe that there is something wrong or bad about them. Suspensions and expulsions are disproportionately applied by age, gender, and race. 4-year-olds are expelled at a rate about 50% greater than 3-year-olds. Boys are expelled 4.5 times more than girls are. Black children account for almost 50% of public preschool suspensions, but comprise less than 1/5 of all preschoolers. Black children are also estimated to be twice as likely to be expelled as Latino and white children, and more than 5 times as likely to be expelled as Asian children. Several studies have found that racial disparities in discipline are not explained by children's behavior. That is, black children do not behave any worse than white children. Rather, they are subject to harsher discipline for similar behaviors as their peers. Implicit bias and cultural differences in views on discipline strategies and their application to teacher-child relationships play a role in exclusionary discipline practices. Early childhood suspensions and expulsions are not as much a result of child behaviors as they are related to adult and program characteristics. A lack of processes and policies for addressing challenging behavior and suspending and expelling children is one factor. Another factor is related to the stress that childcare providers or teachers with implicit, unacknowledged biases come across when perceiving that a child is misbehaving too much and not knowing the right strategies to prevent or address the challenging behavior. This leads to a child being sent to the director's office and in-school suspension, being sent home early and out-of-school suspension, or the determination that the child is not a good fit and is asked not to return, and expulsion. The child is deprived of valuable educational experiences and set on a negative path. To address this complex issue, SRI Education has created a set of recommended policies and practices that could support early education program leaders in reducing and preventing suspensions and expulsions. This interactive practice guide, titled Preventing Suspensions and Expulsions in Early Childhood Settings, a Program Leader's Guide to Supporting All Children's Success, includes relevant, specific, and actionable recommended policies and practices that address the underlying root causes and provide effective alternatives. Program leaders can find resources on supporting social-emotional development, reducing challenging behavior, recognizing the role of cultural differences and implicit biases, and more. In addition, the The practice guide includes a self-assessment to help program leaders reflect on their own policies and practices and prioritize which recommended policies and practices are most necessary and timely to implement. The results of the self-assessment provide a roadmap to navigating the practice guide. Interested in learning more about the issue of disciplinary practices? Curious about what the recommended policies and practices are for your program? Looking for concrete suggestions on how to address the challenging behavior of your children? Take some time to explore and engage with the Program Leader's Guide to Supporting All Children's Success at preventexpulsion.org.
All right, so we will just go into breakout rooms just for about 5 minutes, and then we'll come back, and then I'll share the rest of the slide deck as a resource for you, so that you can do your own exploration and just be able to investigate how you can think about making sure that young children have positive early experiences that don't result in expulsion suspension. So if Becca, you can put us into breakout rooms, but leave me here. That would be great.
Yes, thank you. It takes just a moment. They're opening now. There we go. And Dr. Wesley, we are in a small group still. I think it's with Miss Allison. Allison, is that you?
It's me.
Oh.
It's okay. Well, here we go. Here's our questions. When watching this video, everyone, and anyone can chime in, what stands out? What stood out for you?
I think I'll go ahead and speak. I think for me, one thing that really stood out was the significant disparity of discipline practices when you analyze race. I feel like the fact that we see extension and expulsion and suspension 50% times more in Black students is very alarming.
Yes.
Allison, you can hold that baby. I hear your baby saying,
I'm so
hold
sorry,
me,
guys.
hold me.
I'm by myself with my youngest at my oldest football game because my husband wasn't able to help her come today. So I'm multitasking to the max. So thank you guys for being patient and understanding.
No, Allison, I just as a mother, I appreciate the balance that you're doing today. And it was actually quite precious to hear your child saying, hold me, hold me, hold me, that was precious. So hold that child.
Yes, I will definitely hold him for sure.
Yes.
And Dr. Wesley, I'll just say, again, it was just the disproportionality that struck me as well. And I even am around these conversations peripherally with my work with the Office of Special Education and Early Learning. But that was what struck me as well.
Yeah. And a lot of times we think in special education, it's only the upper grade levels, but it's definitely the journey starts with our youngest. Yeah. The disproportionality is real. Who else? Any remarks, thoughts, reflections?
It's just the three of us right now.
Oh, it's just the three of us. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I will add too. I think another thing. So I work within a preschool setting, and I've been in that setting for several years now. So this kind of, causes me to step back and reflect a little bit, having a conversation about, essentially in-school suspensions, out-of-school suspensions that are occurring that are undocumented, like when we call parents to come pick students up because we don't feel like we can handle their behavior. That's very, very concerning to me as well. And I will look forward to looking into some of these resources that are provided here today to try to help administration and staff come up with, maybe more proactive, productive strategies for our kids.
Yes, exactly. And one of the things you'll see, and I'm going to give you guys a PDF version of this slide deck I just saw a little bit of a typo, so I'll clean up the slide deck a little bit. But what I'll do is give you this printed slide deck along. You already have the Padlet. And in there are some very concrete strategies and next steps that you can take to start thinking with a team, with your team, your respective organizations. But one of the things they say is when there's a mental health consultant on site or a family navigators embedded in your system, the reduction, I'll show that in just a minute, and there's coaching that goes with it. Preschool expulsion suspension rates does go down, does decrease. And so it might just be a matter of supports, but then trying to identify funding. You know, we have something called LCAP. I'm sure you guys do too. Like where in the LCAP fund, if you're the school district, can we identify and have those funds reallocated to early education? If we want to reduce the expulsion rates in the upper grade levels, let's begin that journey here. And it's less likely to happen at the upper grade levels if we do it at the younger grade levels. So. Yeah. Are there any wonderings that anybody has that like, I'm still curious. I'm still scratching my head, or I'm wondering how this might look inside my system, or based on the position that you sit within your organization.
I do wonder about data collection. I wonder if because maybe these definitions are of expulsion and suspension, especially at the early childhood level, if they don't understand that what they're doing is considered expulsion and suspension, very suspicious, then I do wonder, like, how clean is that data that we are using? So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's in California, we have a new law, AB 752, where we're supposed to keep children pushed in, but we still don't collect data. So we still don't know who's being pushed out. So anyhow, I'm glad this was a fruitful conversation. I know we should probably bring folks back.
I just clicked the button, so it'll be just a moment that they should start filtering in.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Welcome, everyone.
It's not a smooth transition when I close those rooms.
It's like,
yes.
We're back. And there's never enough time, and it's always
There's never enough time. Add our 2 minutes back, please.
Yeah, please.
We were having good conversations, though.
Good conversation. I know. We need more time. I'm just a guest speaker for an hour, and I've already, I'm wondering about my time right now. But I'm so glad. Oh, did I get? Oh, what happened? Let me put that back up. That was weird. I in the chat, if you could just share, and maybe just one person share what the conversation was like, and then I'm going to go through the rest of the slide deck pretty quickly so I can show you all the resources. What came up for you in the conversation? And you also use the chat, and then 1 or 2 people unmute.
We talked about that website that was shown in the video that has the self-assessment. A lot of times I feel like that school leaders get so bogged down with all the things going on that they don't have that moment to reflect and say, okay, what are we doing to support these kids? And the fact that that website will kind of do that self-assessment and give you ideas of what your next steps should be. All that's kind of laid out for you. I thought that was a really great resource.
Yes, you're so welcome. Because when I've been thinking about it in my own program, like, well, what do I do? What do we do? It's right there. There's the guide. So yeah, one more, and also use the chat.
Yeah, we started talking about maybe there being societal changes, where before, preschool kids were starting to, learn about how to be social and learn, the beginning steps of recognizing your letters and your numbers. And then time has changed, and the pressures of the little ones, like, have grown. Like now they're entering kindergarten where you already know how to read, you already know how to write your name, you already know how to do math. And so I'm wondering if we need to step back a little bit and go, hold up, let's work on the social skills first, and then start going into this is what kindergarten looks like, and not have them already know how to do things. Like,
Yeah. And you think in other countries, the kids, the first thing they do, first of all, they don't even go to school till like first grade, right? And the first thing they learn is how to be a good community member, how to know who you are as your own self in relationship to others, like all those basic foundational things in preschool that happens. And so that is exactly it. And it's hard to make the case because even if they learn all their alphabets and their numbers and they're doing well, they can't really demonstrate that with you because their behavior overshadows their academic performance, right? Because it's like, I'm not even caring about how well they're doing academically. This child is so disruptive to the classroom. And I'm anticipating that certain children aren't going to be good students already, so they're getting pushed out, and we don't get to learn about their brilliance. This is more or less more about the statistics, and my colleague Dr. Walter Gilliam, actually is the Yale professor who did the research on this. He started in 2005. I had an opportunity to present with him just this past April, and so we're hoping we get to do more work together, but he is the one who did the research on preschool expulsion and suspension that getting all the national attention. He used a tracking device to help figure out who teachers were anticipating would have the bad behavior before the behavior even happened, and it ended up being the Black boys. This is more or
Dr.
less what
West,
you already saw in the video. Was somebody
excuse me.
saying something?
So we have a few comments in the chat. If you
Okay,
can read them out.
sure.
They're coming quickly, so I'm gonna try to do my best, scholars. So stick with me. So it says we all agreed that the stats were shocking, and it seemed like the kids that needed the most help were the ones that were expelled the most. What came up in our conversation was how we would be interested in data surrounding the teacher shortage and expulsion. We have people assuming roles or preschool teacher roles that have degrees in Russian literature, who simply may not understand what typical or atypical development looks like. And then we have a very excited yes to the information. We also have that we talked about a lot of things. One of the things we talked about were how experienced our preschool teachers in effectively managing the behaviors in their classrooms. Which behaviors are classroom managed, developmentally appropriate versus office managed? Behaviors that may indicate a need for special education. And it's a lot coming in, so I'll turn it back over to you, LaWanda. So sorry, scholars, if I missed your comments, but Dr. Wesley, you can also look into the chat.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think I can't see it, but I think what you guys could do is do a transcript of this presentation and start to sort of curate the themes that are coming up, because these are themes that can lead to here's defining the problem, and here's issues with the practice. Now, how do we get to policy, right? How do we do that? And my colleague, Dr. Walter Gilliam, he's out of Yale. I just love him. He's a dear soul now. I can't say we're friends, but we're getting close. But he talks about the 3 Bs, the risk factors that lead to expulsion. And he said the more presence of one of these Bs or more increases the likelihood that you will be pushed out, silently expelled, explicitly expelled. If you're big in stature in terms of your size, that could get you pushed out. It could be a girl or a boy who gets pushed out, or however you identify in terms of your gender. If you are a boy, and I'm skipping to the bottom, if you're big and a boy, that can get you easily pushed out. So that means there could be children, boys who identify as white, who are big in stature. There's somehow we mature them up, right? And like you're scarier, you're more intimidating, you're probably overtowering other children who are smaller in stature. So those things. And if you're Black, and so you have all 3 of those, it's a done deal for you. The likeliness of you being experiencing expulsion suspension throughout your school career is exponential, right? The presence of these 3 Bs. In the Padlet, I leave you with my colleague talking about, we're not going to watch it today, obviously, because I'm over time already, and you guys need a much needed break. But he does talk about who's being expelled. So there's this 9-minute video called Who is Being Expelled by my colleague, Dr. Walter Gilliam. And he does an exceptional job of contextualizing and being very concise. This video also you can find is an hour long, but I was able to find a 9-minute clip that just gives us the right dosage to explain pretty much what you saw in the earlier video, but that video that we just saw earlier comes out of his research. So we'll skip that. We won't see that. But I also want you to know one of your poll questions is like, is the Office of Civil Rights on this? They absolutely are on this. And in 2016, particularly that set of data that they looked at, again, shows you the expulsion rates and what they are, that Black preschoolers are 3 times as likely to be suspended than their peers who happen to be white, and that Black children make up 19% of preschool enrollment, but they are 47% of the suspensions, right? And then, of course, boys represent 54% of preschoolers, but they're 78% of the suspensions. That's all boys, Black, blue, green, Mexican, Asian, all of it. The reason this matters is because it ends up into your hands. There's a lot of deficit thinking about children who have the 3Bs, all presence of all the 3Bs or one of the 3Bs, particularly for Black children. They end up being some of those children are actually very gifted, so their attention span is not there. Think about some of you are brilliant in your own right. Sometimes it's hard to be attentive on a Zoom for a couple hours. You're like, oh my God, I could be looking at this. I could be thinking about that. Those are gifted kids, but they're being referred to having behavioral problems and pushed out. Or there's over referral of children with the 3Bs, particularly Black students, or over referral for expulsion suspension. And you can see where it contributes to achievement gap, it contributes to the dropout, push out, suspension, and then these are the children most likely to end up in prison, in our prison system and incarceration. And so that's another reason why all of this matters. As I get ready to close out, I'm just going to share next steps. Again, you're going to get this slide deck. There's a research article that I'm provided to you from the National Association for the Education of Young Children that gives some strategies about how to think about this. I just wanted to give you different things, and you can see these 6 areas. One of the things we're doing today is doing the pause and reflection. The other thing we need to do is think about relationships, how to build those relationships. And there's, of course, the other areas. Getting to the action piece, that guide that was presented in the video basically is this. They're saying these are the sort of program-wide supports that we could do for our programs to address this issue. Here is the coaching data that says when classrooms are coached and have the presence of an early childhood mental health consultant, you're less likely to see expulsion because you're really getting in the classroom environment and coaching and modeling for those teachers how they keep children pushed in. So just something to keep thinking about, and this is just more resources around it. I left an article, if you guys want to do article studies with your teams to unpack this, here's an article that's here for you that's also on your Padlet. If you're looking at doing this at a statewide level, New Hampshire has done this work. And so they have a whole task force that they convened around this and gave you the roadmap. So you can literally do plug and play around Kentucky's context. For some of you Kentucky Leads folks, if you want to do it that level, or even if you're at the school district level. Of course, you got the Padlet that's full of resources. I actually authored a journal article with my colleague, Dr. Addie Ellis, on exclusionary discipline in preschool for young, and I've said young Black boys' lives matter. And this is with the Journal of African American Males and Education. But again, I put a ton of other resources. I didn't just plug myself. And that's it, all of you guys. I took up too much of your time, but I love being in community with you. If you have questions, let me know. You can email me. These aren't questions we need to answer right now. They're just more pondering and wonderings about next steps. I think it's really important not to just have someone lecture to you or be didactic with you, but really think about what are our next steps and what role will you play to disrupt this space and make it better. And I want to leave you with this quote that kids who need the most love will ask for it in the most loving ways. So just know that someone was holding their baby because they needed them or their child. It's because they're asking for it, right? You can reach me anytime. I'm easy, I'm accessible. Dr. William knows where I live. We were colleagues at one point when he was here in California. So that's it, everyone. I'm sorry. Go get your regulated break. I hope this was fruitful.
I'm gonna, oh, Dr. Williams, go ahead. I was gonna invite everyone to take a quick break, but if you would like to do that, please feel free.
No, I was just going to just share my thank you so much, Dr. Wesley's, for sharing your expertise. It was good to see you again, very dear colleague of mine. Thank you for coming, and we hope that you'll come back and visit us again. So I will turn it over to Shasta or Becca to send us off to break.
Okay.
Yeah, and it looks like we are scheduled for some break time. It's 11:35. Right now, Becky, you have the next two activities. Um, how much time? Can we do like a 5-minute break? Will you still be able to get your activities in that time if we take the 5 minutes, or should we just kind of like let people take care of themselves really quickly and you keep going? What works best, do you think, for you and the team?
I think it's probably best if we give everybody a 5-minute break. I was just texting with Thomas. I was like, I can quickly show them SharePoint, and what I have to say can totally be an email. So everyone, please take 5 minutes, and then we'll do a quick, I'll show you SharePoint where you can find all of Dr. West. You can find her presentation. You can find all the resources that she's mentioning today. And Dr. Wesley, I have to take a moment and say thank you too. I have enjoyed your presentation and the resources that you shared so much, and I'm so thankful to have spent this time with you. Thank you. But yeah, well, I'll be back in 5 minutes.
Okay, and I'll stop sharing. All right. Well, take care, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Take care.
Thank you very much, Dr.
You're welcome. Anytime.
Becca, when we kind of come back, I'll just let you go ahead and just like take control of the screen and get started. That way you have maybe a smidge more time.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you, Shasta. And we still have about 2 minutes. We have about another minute before we all come back together, but I'm going to go ahead and invite those of you for our follow-up. We have just questions and reflections, and I mostly want to hear from you. So if you have any reflections, any big ahas that you want to share, this is a time to open your camera and talk about the content that we just focused on, any connections that you want to make to that content, if you want to share how you're going to use it or the resources that Dr. Wesley shared moving forward, any ideas for pushing this out into our districts, pushing this out to the people that need to be aware of it. That this will be a great time to go ahead and open your cameras, unmute your mics, and share some thoughts. Would anyone like to share some thoughts?
Hey, Becca, this is Stacy.
Hey, Stacy.
Dr. Wesley shared, for the state level, what I think she said New Hampshire has done. I think it'd be kind of cool to see what they have done and see how we can implement something like that here in Kentucky, since we do talk a lot about equity and it's important work too. So I'd like to see, I guess, what they do and how we can implement something like that at the state level.
Great. That's a good connection to the work that we're already doing at our state level. Good connection, Stacy, and thanks for sharing. Is there anyone else that would like to share their thoughts?
Becca, this is Katie Gubnick. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. I can hear you.
Awesome. I was just thinking when she was presenting, like how I work in a rural district, so the student population might not be as reflective, where I work as it is in Oakland, California, but just like working district-wide or building-wide to address like personal bias and stuff like that, I think is really important. And sometimes things that get overlooked because people don't even realize that they have that personal bias going in. So considering those 3 Bs and just talking about them, I think is a great way to just get that conversation started.
Great. And I love that you have taken that on. I can tell by the way that you shared that's a conversation that you plan on initiating. So thank you for that.
I would like to read some of that research where they were talking about how they had the trackers on some of the teachers to see who where their attention was, because I think even like I'm from a pretty rural area, but even at that, I think we focus so many our times our teachers and educators and even administrators focus on the boys or bigger kids, and they get your attention even if you don't have a diverse like culturally or racially diverse population, there's still disparities in where we're focusing our attention and looking for bad behaviors in certain groups.
Yes, our biases exist, and if we don't have a population like as the one that Dr. Wesley described today, that does not mean that we don't have biases that we can become aware of and then address ourselves. And just that awareness, I think, is a good first step. So thank you. Would anyone else like to speak?
I would. Something that we talked about in our small group, Shannon brought up, is that with COVID and so many of the community and privately funded daycares and preschools and things being having shortages of workers, they're probably pushing out kids a little bit quicker than what they would in a normal year. And so that's something that we really need to be aware of as districts, that we might be getting an influx of students that may be exhibiting some of the behaviors that has gotten them kicked out of other places.
That's a good point, Stacy. Yes, for sure. Krista?
I was just going to note that I really enjoyed Dr. Wesley's presentation style. I thought time went by so quickly in the way that we all were able to communicate with each other. Like that 10 minutes at first, I thought 10 minutes, that's a long time. It went by so fast. So it was enriching conversation. I really liked her icebreaker, and definitely will use that. So I appreciated that.
Yeah, I'm going to talk to the team, but this style today, I loved this style. And with this large, now we were a team of 15 and now we're a team of 30, right? So I think this is something we'll try to incorporate moving forward if possible, when it's appropriate. So thank you. Would anyone else like to share anything?
Yeah, I would like to agree with Krista 100%, but also just make note, like, I think when we were in our small group, we heard a lot of echoing of things that are happening, K-12 as well, which is we are down staff. We have kids who are coming in that maybe haven't been in school or have been out of school for a long time. And there's just such a need for behavior interventions and for teachers to have resources for behavior, because it seems to be a huge issue right now.
Definitely. Definitely. And Abby shared a comment. Oh, Abby said she agrees. Dr. Wesley was a fantastic and engaging presenter. I loved her information style and demeanor. Yes, same. I want everyone who has an opportunity to share, who wants to share, has that opportunity before I move to the technology piece. So does anyone else want to share any last thoughts or make some connections before we move on to SharePoint?
I also wanted to say that I really enjoyed having the two cohorts together today. I got to meet a fellow student at Western, so that was nice to kind of get that connection.
Yeah, I tried to split everyone up into the breakout rooms. I tried to put cohort 1 with cohort 2 and kind of mix everyone in a bit. Thomas, do you have anything to share before I move on to SharePoint?
I don't have anything to really share. Maybe I can just kind of add or echo what everyone is saying. I think Dr. Wesley did a phenomenal job in presenting, and I also can appreciate the space, which was safe. So it for me, it felt very safe to have these conversations. So I just appreciate Dr. Wesley and her presentation style, as it allowed us to be safe and actually have these conversations, which are very difficult conversations to have. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the first part that she asked us to identify the ways that we define ourselves, or the ways that we would describe ourselves. So I am interested in following up as a group and kind of learning more about you guys in that context of how you see, how you define yourself, how you bring yourself to, what do you bring to this work. So that piece I thought was something that's so simple, but something that we've sometimes overlook. But now I'll share the technology piece. It's SharePoint is where we come together and share resources. And let's see, I'm going to try and share my screen. All of our meetings are recorded. And this is, there you go. Are you all able to see the screen? Okay, great. So this is where you'll come to find recorded Saturday sessions. They're here on the Saturday Sessions tab. Today's session will be posted I'll probably have it done by Monday afternoon, but it will be there. You can access any past seminars if you would like. They're all here. There's also a directory that is on this site, and I have included as many pictures as you guys have sent. If you haven't sent a picture in yet, please do. It's so hard to connect with one another in this pandemic world that we're living in. So I do feel like the pictures help. It is kind of a floating head, but it is what it is. And you can filter by cohorts if you want to see who your team members are, cohort 1, cohort 2, and then there's also leadership. The general resources, I've already added Dr. Wesley's resources, the link to the, I think, yeah, it was a Padlet that she put together. So those are already listed. That link is already listed on this, the resources site. All past agendas you can also find here if you want to see what we have been talking about. You can find past agendas there, as well as resources that any past presenters have shared. Again, let's see, you have to be invited to this site. I believe everyone should have received an invitation. If you have trouble accessing it, just let me know, and we can work on that, getting you access. You can always find a link to the upcoming meeting in this site. There's a little bit of information about Kentucky Leads, as well as your, where are they? Oh yeah, your university contact information is there as well. So that's really all that I have for today when it comes to the SharePoint site. And I do want to stress as follow-up, at the end of each session, we're data driven, right? At the end of the day, we're data driven. So there is a survey that is shared at the end of each Saturday seminar. And I would like for you to please fill that survey out as close to, by Monday at the latest. We would prefer to receive the results of that survey on today would be ideal. Monday at the latest, please. And that survey link doesn't change, and that's why it's important that you do it in a timely manner. It's the same link that we always share, so we have to take that data out and get ready for the next month's data to be input into that. So we're gonna, if someone would please share that data survey link in the chat. Cohort 1, you probably already have the link. It's ready to collect this Saturday's data. And at this time, it's almost 11:55. Dr. Williams, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Becca. So thank you all for participating for today. It's great to see Cohort 1 and Cohort 2 together. During our next session, I believe it's dated for November 20th. We'll have an opportunity to get to know each other a little more as we continue to build community in this virtual setting. So again, thank you so much for your attention for today, for being engaged. in conversation, in this difficult conversation. And, we hope that you'll take the resources that Dr. Wesley provided into your prospective school districts. So I will turn it over to the team. Pete, Shasta, Becca, if you have anything that you would like to share before we end.
I would just like to reinforce the positive comments. I think it was a fabulous, just an awesome presentation. The additional resources that Dr. Wesley provided, I think will pay tremendous dividends going forward throughout the Commonwealth. So yes, great to see everybody. I know we spent a brief amount of time building community, but as Dr. Williams said, next month we'll open up those that opportunity. So great. Be safe. Again, I put my contact information in the chat. It's also linked to the SharePoint site. So if you have any questions, comments, or need to anything lead related, please address those to me, please. Thank you.
Oh yeah, great, Pete. If I can jump in really quickly. So Pete, you brought up a really good point, and we'll kind of discuss this next week as we talk more around the logistics and how Kentucky Leads will look moving forward, being that we now have 2 cohorts together. But any questions that you have, Pete will be your first point of contact, and Pete will put his information in the chat if you do not already have it. But Pete, he will be your first point of contact. So I will turn it over to Shasta. Becca, any last words?
I would just like to give everybody just a reminder, our next session is November the 20th. That's like always important to oh, do I have that on my calendar? So make sure that you have that there. And again, just to reinforce what Becca was saying about the survey, that is super helpful to us in knowing what's working and what's not, what you like as a team and what you don't. So make sure that you answer that, because that does inform, our presentation and our thinking. So we appreciate all of you filling out that survey. And other than that, I don't have anything. So if anybody else.
Nothing. But just enjoy your Saturday. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. And thank you again. And we look forward to seeing you next month. Take care.
Thank you.